So everybody watched the fight, right? The main fight, obviously, the Poirier with the
Great.
Yeah, but was it because I felt like I watched the first round and it started like Hooker was like, okay, jab, double jab, low calf kick, jab, low calf kick, and I was like, yeah, that's technical MMA striking 101. And then like at some point I feel like Poirer in the second round realized, damn, I lose this fight if I go technical. Let's turn this into a slugfest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what he needed.
Yeah, exactly. It was from a tactical standpoint. It was actually correct to throw out the technique because or not the technique, the tactics, because he was obviously losing, right?
Yeah, and when they did start throwing down, it was just a beautiful display of technical brawling.
Yes and no, because
no, Andy,
I feel like I don't know. The Poirier really impressed me in his last fights with his shoulder roll and his head movement, even under fire, and it was still kind of there. But I feel like I wasn't that impressed with his defense like in his last fights.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I feel like he was having a lot of trouble with the ranging initially. Like there was, like he just was not used to Hooker's jab, and Hooker's jab, I mean, it's a great jab, and also from the Southpaw versus Orthodox dynamic, you don't expect the jab to come in as frequently as Hooker was throwing it, and he's coming on the inside too, like the inside angle, which is like, and I think Poirier was just expecting that he'd be able to either get his forearm in the way or parry it, and he wasn't able to do it. Like his timing was off. So I think that's what forced him to kind of get in those brawls, like you were saying.
Yep.
And then, but the longer the brawl went, like you saw it against the fence, once he was trapped there, it like the longer it went, I thought the better it was going for Poirier. Like Hooker wasn't as sharp in the longer exchanges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's exactly what we have seen from Poirier in his development. He was like, in the past, he was like this really, maybe one or two combination puncher, always looking for the knockouts. And in the last few fights, that's what I meant. We on the one hand saw a big improvement in his defense, I feel like, with his shoulder roll I really liked and his head movement. But at the same time, his combinations were getting a lot better, so that paid off, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you make of his defense with his like bringing the elbow up to shoulder roll?
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's great. I think people should do it a lot more.
Yeah, I'm tempted to start playing around with it a bit more.
It's good. It's a really fun one, and like you can, if you time it right, like. So you can give a big parry, like if someone's giving you a jab, they give you a fake jab. They think they have you, so they give you a second jab, and your elbow comes up and parries that. And you just feel like like a kung fu ninja. It's awesome.
There's no point doing it if you know.
Have you seen the casual, the filthy casual guide of Jack Slack on Poirier?
Yes.
It was great. It really explained it well.
Yeah, and on his podcast he calls it the hillbilly shell or something. I forget.
Hillbilly shell.
Hillbilly.
Right.
But isn't it? Maybe I'm wrong because obviously I'm not school of striking. But isn't it kind of like a cross guard in Muay Thai?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it's a lot like a cross guard.
Yeah.
Or the do they Dracula guard? They sometimes.
Yeah, I think the Dracula guard you kind of use the long guard more. The right arm is like a long guard, right? And what Poirier is doing is just like basic cross guard, basically.
Yeah. If someone were to tell me, what's this called, I'd say cross guard because that's not dissimilar to what Foreman or Roy Jones or all these guys used to do.
Yeah, and for me, the shoulder roll actually is more like what Mayweather is doing, right? This the Boston shell, where you keep your lead arm down more. So I guess what he's actually doing is mostly cross guarding, and kind of there's some shoulder rolls in there, but it's mostly the cross guard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the shoulder that like the Philly shell requires, in my mind, the size of the gloves, the size of the boxing gloves to impede the punch. So it doesn't work as well, in a context where.
Yeah, but why? Because I mean, your lead side you basically protect with your shoulder mostly, right?
Yes.
So you're talking about the
upper quarter chin, yes.
Yeah.
But then the body is protected by the left glove, right?
But also your arm and your elbow, kind of.
Sure. And then on the right side, you're trying to keep a mobile defense with your right hand, right?
Yeah,
so either
exactly.
Going in front of the chin or the outside.
Yeah.
Now, that just does not work as well when you can't tuck in behind the glove.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
that's why you don't see it as often.
Yeah.
And there's also the problem with stance.
Kind of, I agree, but at the same time, isn't that like a more general problem with all guards in MMA, not just with this one?
Yes, I think all guards still suffer from the same issue of smaller gloves in comparison to bigger gloves, but I do think in particular Philly shell suffers a fair bit. Bobby Green, I think, has used it a bit.
Bobby Green, but
yes. He's the only one that comes to mind, Rama?
Yes. Bobby Green is the only guy I can think of that does it a lot. And then, you could say Ferguson to some extent. But I feel like when he does it, it's very transient. It's not like a position for him. It's one of his 17 things he's doing at once.
Yeah, and he probably doesn't even know what it is. Yeah, that's like Tony Ferguson. He just does it.
Yeah.
He's dancing between moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always felt like the Philly shell, like I said, I'm not a striking expert, but I think like the low lead arm, it's actually kind of good because it feels like you can get an underhook easily if people shoot on you, and it's a bit more protective of your body. So I feel like it's maybe a good option against takedowns and body shots because, like, the double forearm guard, for example, right? It's like isn't that reliant on gloves because you use your forearms, but at the same time you're really, really open for takedowns.
Yeah, there's a good fight to watch, which is Robert Whittaker versus Colton something. I'm blanking on his name. It was like one of Whittaker's first fights in the UFC after his Ultimate Fighter run, and he came out with that lead hand just down by his front knee the whole fight. I think because he was the Colton guy was a wrestler, and Rob was coming from Australia, and his wrestling was still, I don't know, maybe questionable. He stopped all the takedowns anyway this fight, but he obviously thought that having that lead hand low the whole time would be a good way to dig that underhook, and that worked perfectly for him for that fight. So there is that bit of evidence for that.
Yeah, I feel like in MMA especially, personally, I guess the best would be if your lead arm is always kind of extended. So either down so you can dig for underhooks, or out so you can frame and block, right? But I feel like if you have a really conventional tight guard and protect your chin at all times with your lead hand, I think that's really for MMA. It's not that great.
That's I even wonder when I'm we're sparring with 16-ounce gloves and then switching to the smaller gloves if it's just creating bad habits of getting used to blocking with the bigger gloves because. Really, the biggest part of your arm when you put the small gloves on is your elbow and like shoulder.
Yeah,
it's like you can't get your little hands up with those tiny gloves and expect to get the same coverage as a big 16-ounce oven mitt you got on. I mean, Gaethje does it well when he does that real high guard and he gets his hands all the way on top of his head.
Yes,
So that
but also that's the point. People always say, yeah, Gaethje is such a great wrestler, never got taken down. But at the same time, he never really fought against a really good wrestler. So that actually might bite him in his ass against Khabib, I guess.
It'd be interesting. I do hope we get to see that fight now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that might be Khabib's last fight too, right?
Maybe. Might be, yeah.
The way they're talking, I think, if his dad, because his dad's got COVID, right?
That's what I thought.
Like maybe in a coma or something. And
I
think he'd come out of it, but man, I'm sure that could just throw it all into chaos, and it wouldn't. He seems like the type of person who might just pack it in if his dad. Anyway, let's not even go there.
So we can go back to the guard thingy with the arm down or out. So that for me ties it.
Do you guys hear the bells?
Yeah, but it's fine. It's fine.
Adds a bit of flavor to the.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's the Rama bell section.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the lead-in.
You know what? I'm really glad I decided to do this podcast at church.
Yeah. I mean, at least if you're not sitting in the church, because I feel like people wouldn't appreciate you doing a podcast in a church. But otherwise,
yeah,
it's
casual. So, what I was going to say is with the guard, I think this all ties in to something I'm talking about a lot, is the idea of a multi-tool, right? Because if you do like a fairly complex sport that might be grappling, or let's say MMA, obviously is even more complex. I think like you actually want tools that do many jobs at once at the expense of doing the best thing, because one could argue there are better guards and there are better takedown defense, and maybe there are better takedowns and better sweeps, but if you can develop competency in one area or skill or tool and use it in many different areas, I think in a complex sport that will get you a lot farther than trying to find the optimal solution for every problem, because you will not able to juggle all these balls in reality.
I like the idea. Though I still do like watching specialists.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
They're entertaining,
100%, yeah.
But practicality-wise, and you want to be as flexible.
And actually, I feel like you want to have both, because what I always try to do, like plan A is for me, is like being very, very fundamental, solid top game, solid takedowns, solid. The plan is obvious for me. The A plan is takedown, top control, finish, right? But at the same time, if shit goes not well, and maybe the other guy just has better fundamentals, I always try to be as scrambly as a motherfucker as I can be, because then you do the crazy omoplatas and gogoplatas and heel hooks and inversions, because if you're it still has value if you have like crazy shit in your repertoire, because people cannot prepare as well.
Yeah.
It's like the 10th Planet warm-up's got a series of Hail Marys. It's like a flying Kimura, just a bunch of, hey, you got to have a couple of things in the back pocket just to pull out, if just to have there just in case. And I do agree with that. Although I don't know how much it's worked for them, or like, who knows? I don't know how much time you should spend on it, but I think it's always good to have something that you can just at least give a shot.
That is a very interesting argument, because I'd be very what is their win percentage? I mean, that's a huge team by now, right? 10th Planet is a huge team. I'd be very curious to see how are they doing in normal IBJJF competition? Like, are they top 5 in the world?
It doesn't feel like it.
No, I don't think you could rate them on their IBJJF record. It has to be some kind of sub only for them, right? Because I don't think that they really focus on IBJJF rule set.
Yeah, but even ADCC,
for better or worse. So ADCC would be you could have a look there how they go.
Yeah,
at least they medaled last year, right? I think was it their first medals?
Did they? Who?
They was it Thor? Was it John Blank? He's did he get a bronze? Trying to remember.
I'm also trying to remember. Might be.
One of the girls maybe got silver or something. I think.
But didn't Gio get a bronze? I bet Gio got a bronze at some point.
Probably. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me.
But I always felt like for the amount of schools they don't have that much success.
Yeah.
Kind of.
On the competition scene.
Yeah. I mean, it might be rules, obviously, but who knows?
Well, even the EBI, I mean, I think I heard something at Danaher talking about once that they were quite happy that, 10th Planet created their own rule set for EBI Invitational, and then Danaher went over there and his guys cleaned it all up.
Yeah.
Even though, it was supposed to be the ultimate rule set for 10th Planet, but even they didn't really get the upper hand on it.
Yeah, I feel like 10th Planet's more of like a cultural phenomenon. It's like it's built a strong culture within itself, and it has all of these, very unique aspects to its own gym culture, including its pedagogy, and but it's not necessarily a competitive gym by percentage. It's a culture building gym.
Yeah. I agree. Because you have teams like Eidos, right? Eidos is obviously, they just collect good competitors and make them better. It's not like they build from the ground up. They sometimes do, but it's mostly basically a competitive professional gym. Whereas 10th Planet is all over the world. It's mostly casuals. Casuals. Just having fun, which I personally...
Better business, right?
Yeah, it's better business, and I even care more about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because competition is great, competition is important, it's really important, but at the same time, never forget, 99% of people who do our sport aren't world champions.
That's right. It's better just to have a bunch of healthy people.
Yes.
Training, having a good time, mums and dads, kids, everyone in there. And
cool hand signals that you can use in pictures.
Oh no, I never do it. I never do it. I hate people who do that. Also, I'm always that guy at a seminar when old people say also I'm like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm always that guy too. When someone says Oster, I'm like, oh, thanks, man. Have a good day.
I've started saying it for the first time these last couple of months, just as on the Zoom class, get everyone to do a big virtual OS.
Oh no, Sonny, why?
Look, I'm just trying to think of something to sign off the class or something. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else does it, but I'm like, let's virtual OS, guys. I don't know. It'll probably, once I see everyone in person again, I don't think I'll keep going. But
hopefully not.
Yeah. I did it. What can I say?
That'd be funny. What if at the end of the class they're like, all right, guys, good class, and they're just like looking at you with like wide eyes, just waiting for oath. Like their Adam's apples are quivering.
Yeah.
If anything, it'll be wide eyes going, I hope it doesn't make us say the damn word.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe let's talk a little bit more about casual grapplers, like we are. Because I always get really salty when I see, like, on Instagram, competitors talking about, yeah, I put so much work into this, and yeah, I work so much harder and more than everybody. And I'm like, dude, you roll around on meds for 8 hours a day, where people who are firefighters or surgeons do actually work to support their community and support their families. And additionally, they still make time to do something they love, for which they actually have to pay and don't get any money in return. And you tell me you are like this great hard worker. It's like, no, you made a choice. You made the choice that you want to work for a certain thing, which revolves around you getting to a certain goal you want to achieve, mostly for yourself, I guess. And that's fine. It's okay. But don't act like people who aren't professional athletes don't work as hard. In fact, I believe, personally, most of them work harder and support the community.
Are they saying that I work harder than like the general population, or are they saying I work harder than other grapplers or whatever?
I think the first guy, if you say you work harder than other grapplers, that's fine, I guess. But some people say like, oh yeah, you can get to this level if you just work as hard as I do. And I'm like, no, they just made a different life choice. It's not like they don't work as hard. It's just they don't spend as much time on that thing because they have other things in their life, right? Mm-hmm. This is this argument of like, yeah, you could be as good as I am if you just work as hard as me. No, it's more like you can be as good as I am if you make the sacrifices to achieve this certain thing. Mm-hmm. And most people are not, right?
I mean, the other thing that really bugs me is this weird entitlement that I sometimes see where someone's like, oh, I work so hard, I should be more famous, which is like the worst. Or I should get more money, like that's the worst. I think that's, and I used to see this every now and then in like, less developed countries where they're saying, I should be more famous. I have, this accolade and that accolade and whatever else. But like you were saying, it's not like you're building bridges across, unfordable rivers or something. Like you're fucking choking people.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of that will come down to is like where you happen to live. If were you lucky enough to live near a good school where your hard work was able to be met with training partners who could give you the opportunity to grow your skills, or if you're in the middle of nowhere,
yeah,
exactly. Matter how hard you work.
I mean, it just comes down.
It's going to be very difficult to get out.
Yeah, exactly. Have
you seen I was sorry, this week I watched, it was like the little preview for Francis Ngannou, just his story of getting out of.
No, I didn't see that.
It's worth watching.
Okay.
Because, he's in this place mining sand, and then he goes to the biggest city and sells his motorbike to get boxing lessons, which. It was a mixed Molly Whoppery video. I don't know if you guys have seen him. He puts together really good pieces. So I'll send it to you afterwards. But it was just telling the story of that, and it's like, man, he worked hard.
Yeah.
He worked hard. There's no, that's hard work coming from a place where there was no martial arts training to get where he got.
Yeah.
That's hard work.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah, and
so he made a few critical choices that he didn't have to make, and then that's what got him where he is, right?
Exactly,
huge
exactly. And he gives back, right? That's also really important.
Gives back now, yes. So there's it's pretty much, if you say you're the hardest worker, there's nearly always someone you can find.
Yeah,
who
and
might have come from harder circumstances.
Yes, exactly. And what I always dislike is a lot of these people who are that entitled, they kind of... I don't like these single-minded athletes who have obviously made the choice that they made their competitive career their only and whole focus, because I don't want to be disrespectful, but I think that's a really egocentric and egotistic thing to do, and I really had always more respect for great athletes who also maybe supported a family were great husbands, dads, and that's why. I don't know, when I see Volkov in the embedded episodes or Damien Meyer, I always feel like I can relate much more to them because they obviously are great athletes and do all the work, but they also try to build something and support families and stuff like that. And for me, that's much more likable than those robots who say like, I must win world championship for more honor. It's like, yeah, okay, wow.
You know what that reminds me of? Do you remember the lead up between Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman? And they're on ESPN, and then Weidman saying, "I have my family, and they give me all the love I need, and I fight for them." And then Rockhold is saying, "Well, I don't have a family. I can focus on it 100%. You're not supported by them. You're distracted by them."
Yeah, that's exactly what I dislike.
Yeah, right. And then Saturday night comes around. Weidman hits that a poorly timed back kick, gets his back taken. Rockhold pummels him on the ground, and then I think he quits on the stool, right? Like it's between rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Sunday morning, everyone dumps their girlfriends.
But you know what? Chris Weidman's dad said in the cage afterwards, mate, he's still my boy.
Yeah.
That's the real championship right there.
Yeah.
I remember, embedded, it's like, Weidman's like dropping his kids off in between to school, in between training sessions or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like when after the lights go out and the end of the career happens, it's something's still going to be there.
Exactly.
But, if you got a good family, that's still going to be there for a lot longer than your competitive career, unless, you can still work it. I'm sure there's people who've walked both lines and whatever, but...
look at Cormier. Cormier, I think, is a great example, right?
Yep.
It's a great example, right?
Family man, and then he still coaches at the high school. That's crazy.
Yeah, man.
So cool.
He does so much. Commentator, wrestling coach, 2-time champ, I don't know what else. He's doing so much. And he's a father. He's a family man. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, we cannot look into their private lives, but it seems to me like he actually invests a lot of time in his family and his children and so on. I mean, that's at least how it appears. But we all know it's social media, right? So who knows?
Yeah,
that's right.
That's still a busy schedule. Unless he's literally only at the high school practices when the cameras are there.
Yeah.
which I don't think so, but that would be fun.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I absolutely don't think so either. But I really want to make sure people are 100% conscious about that. That's social media. All we do is speculating, and we don't know these people personally, and a lot of stuff we see on social media is not really an accurate representation of reality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's obvious. I don't feel like I even have to state that, but anyways.
I did want to actually discuss the shots that Hooker was using to take Poirer down.
Mm-hmm.
Because it feeds into what Andy was saying last time we had spoken. So did you guys notice the first takedown? I was actually really impressed by it because I thought the timing was really on point. And it almost had a perfect finish.
Did he go for a crackdown?
No, I think that was like the second or third one, I guess.
Yeah. The first one, if I remember correctly, was an outside step double.
Yeah, I love that shot. Yeah.
So it was an outside step double, and then he brings it to the near side. And if he had just a little more, authority on it, like he would have cartwheeled and then he'd got to the far side. And instead he got put into that, like a guillotine. But I thought the outside step single was just there all day in the Southpaw Orthodox matchup, and I thought that the trail leg coming in at that angle, like. Hooker is so good at that, like just placement with the trail leg.
Yep.
So I was really impressed by that. What did you guys think of the 40 guillotine attempts?
I think it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm always not sure what to make of guillotines, because they are a threat, and threats change tempo. Tempo changes the direction, can change the direction of a fight if you make people defend. That gives you an opening for other stuff. But at the same time, I feel like 80% of guillotines, maybe more, end up in burning yourself out and actually helping the other guy to finish his shot. So I don't know if the risk is really... it's I don't know. I like guillotines myself, but I also see that people... They don't work as much as they used to work in the past.
Yeah. I mean, I think
it's...
Yeah, go ahead, Sonny, sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it was one of those situations where, because he won, it kind of like, I can look back and go, it was it worked out for him. But there was a point there where it was like, okay, you've got to be careful here if you keep going for a guillotine and getting put down onto the ground. It might change the flow of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing, I don't know, I mean, I don't know who's listening to this podcast. For some, this might be obvious, but maybe some people aren't that experienced with wrestling. People always say in jiu-jitsu, or not always, but oftentimes, don't shoot with the head on the outside, they will counter you with the guillotine. And I'm always like, no man, I will counter your guillotine with my double leg. Because if you actually understand the guillotine and the double leg, and you understand the importance of hip angle and the direction of the force vectors where you're going, it's not that hard for a good wrestler to end up in a position where it's fairly improbable you will get guillotined. I mean, if you can get to the right to the right side of the hip, the guillotine is gone anyways. Mm-hmm. But even if he gets into guard or half guard or I don't know, shin guard, if you have the right angle or he has the wrong angle, I guess it's fairly easy to defend. And people in jiu-jitsu act like you just have to wrap around the head and people stop everything they do. But that's not what we see in MMA, especially. People will keep going, keep trucking with the double leg, and more often than not, they will just finish their double leg shot. Mm-hmm. I mean, and obviously we have guillotine finishes, but like if we just look at the percentage, I feel like people get a lot more times taken down when they attempt the guillotine than they actually get a finish. So it's kind of like the discussion about risk and reward. What is more important, getting a finish right here and now, or giving up eventually a takedown? I don't know. It's a tricky question.
Well, I was talking to Brian Ebersol, and he had a saying back in the day that guillotines were a myth. And he was saying that because the commentary would always say that people were in on a deep, they'd be in on a deep guillotine on him. And he goes, they weren't deep in on a guillotine. I was deep in on a double leg.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess there's something to that.
Yeah, in some way. Oh, Rama, you go first.
I was just going to say, like, I think it's, at least with the way Poirer is using it, he's using it like a tactical deterrent. Like he's trying to just get people scared of shooting at all. But if they know that's your one tactical deterrent, then they're just going to have, like you were saying, just going to have very good guillotine defense and then nullify that.
Yeah. And yeah, what I was going to say is at some point, and that's like, I feel like the quintessence of a lot of stuff I'm also talking about on Instagram. It's not like the guillotine is the perfect counter to the double leg. It's also not is the double leg the perfect counter to the guillotine. In the end, it comes down to who is more skilled in that certain area. So it becomes we just pick battles and the battle is who is better prepared. If you have a crappy double leg and the other guy has a great guillotine, he will probably get you. If the other guy has a crappy guillotine and you have a great double leg, he will probably just get taken down. And then it gets more about, at some level, it's not about knowledge, right? Because everybody knows these kind of things. But then it comes just about how your skill, how well do you do your stuff. And that becomes the better you get, the more important that is. And the less important is a knowledge advantage, because this gets diminished real quick, the knowledge discrepancy. So you just have to get skilled in some areas and pick them so that you have a game which is kind of coherently and fitting. And there can be many different games. I'm not saying everybody should do singles, doubles, guillotines, and rear naked chokes. That might be statistically a very good game, but for some people, let's say Ryan Hall, they do flashy taekwondo kicks and Imanari rolls, and if it fits, it's fine, but it should fit.
Yeah, this game is hilarious.
What about then for fundamentals for people wanting to get into MMA? Because if you're coming from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, going for the guillotine off a double leg might be a fundamental thing that you're going to build into your instincts first off. But I think we'd probably all agree that the instinct, if you're going into MMA, that you want to build if someone shoots in for a double is your sprawl. Going to snap down front headlock, not going for a guillotine, because that could just be disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go the front head road, I would say get a front headlock, get your hips back, work from there, and you can still get the guillotine or DAS if you want. But at the same time, maybe... it depends, again, on your game. Some people maybe should go for stiff arms, underhooks, and stuff like that, and don't worry about the head at all. And even I always feel like the sprawl is really important, but it should basically be your last line of defense, not your go-to.
Well, footwork is really first line of wrestling defense.
Yeah, and also digging underhooks, man, especially in MMA. In MMA, I feel like key is just getting your arm in there and pulling them up. It's like from like I said, talk with Sonny about is I'm doing an MMA study now and I'm watching all the fights from this year.
Perfect.
Yeah, and it's for me it's obvious that the number one, statistically at least, to stop takedowns is getting an underhook in there. It's like people don't just sprawl anymore. It happens, but
So
it's
a takedown study or is it a takedown defense study?
It's mostly a takedown study, but obviously I watch all the fights and take some notes if I see something interesting. And that's just something I noted. It will probably not show in the graphs, but it's more anecdotal that I noticed that.
Okay.
That's the same thing I talked about is like rear body locks, right, and mat returns. They're like huge in MMA.
Yep.
Which also ties nicely into what Sonny was saying. Like, who in a jiu-jitsu school or BJJ school really practices a lot of rear body lock, standing rear body lock, mat returns, and all this stuff? I guess not a lot, because it's not even that popular, it doesn't even exist in freestyle wrestling really that much. So I feel like this is a really, really, really important self-defense, or in this case MMA skill, which I always felt like only folk style wrestling really focuses on. Which is a shame, because we should adapt it.
The biggest thing for self-defense is, getting back up off the ground or keeping someone down if they're getting up.
Yep.
I mean, so freestyle doesn't have the aspect of breakdowns, obviously there's Poirer, but like the mat returns are definitely a thing. And the added risk is of the supplé, right? Yeah. So if someone hits the supplé, then it could be the pinfall. That could be the end of the match. So people aren't playing around with that position in the same way.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it exists, but I mean, in a college wrestling match, you're guaranteed you will end up there many times. So it's just like I always say, it's not about who invented stuff and who does stuff. And when people say, yeah, the Uchimata is just a wizard kick, I mean, yeah, sure, it exists in wrestling, but let's be honest. Where is it developed? Where is it most common? Where is it most developed? And that's what I'm talking about. Basically, almost all techniques exist everywhere, but who stretched it the most, who developed it the most? It's the same thing when people in BJJ say, yeah, we have takedowns, the single leg is a part of BJJ. I'm like, yeah, but it still sucks comparatively to wrestling. Like, bro, what do you want to say? It's like, yeah, right. Then I can say the God exists in judo. It's the same argument.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree that it all came from catch wrestling. I think that's pretty well understood by everyone.
Yeah. I mean, we all know the ancient Greek catch wrestlers, right?
Not the Greeks. They didn't have it codified then. You know.
Okay.
Working double wrist locks. It was.
I'm pretty sure they did.
And there may be some double wrist locks on the hieroglyphs in the tomb of Bakhet in Egypt. Maybe.
So these were catch wrestlers too. Oh, okay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's all catch wrestling.
Yeah. I bet.
Pin or submit.
Yeah.
Submit.
Pin. That's true.
Man, I would love to run a tournament if we're ever allowed to touch each other again here.
Yeah, man. Maybe it's. Hey, that was my dog.
What's his name or her name?
He's called Pancho.
Poncho, like
Pancho.
Like the thing I wear when it's raining really heavily.
No, that's Poncho.
Okay.
No, it's like
Punch?
no, like a Pancho.
Yeah, poncho.
Yeah, but isn't the thing you wear with a P-O, poncho?
Is it?
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
American accent. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a poncho. Poncho. Okay. My bad.
Okay, maybe let's go back to the guillotine and the fight, right? We were still talking about the hooker fight, kind of.
Oh man, that guard action. I mean, I thought that arm was broken. And was it fourth round?
He yelled out in pain, right? Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything, but
I don't know. Maybe I didn't. Like, it looked like the arm, when the arm was like the most pressure was on it. I thought I heard him yell, but I could have been wrong. Only watch, you know.
Maybe let's talk a bit more about the guard in general, because I think he actually did a good job from close guard.
Yeah, super aggressive.
Yeah, he tied in some punches, some elbows. He constantly attempt at the same time triangles, armbars, kept his overhook, and I feel like at some in some way I think like that's exactly what you should do, which is great. But at the same time, I also felt like Hooker actually allowed it to happen, because he kind of sit back a little bit too much for someone on top. Right? He didn't really pressure that much at all.
Yeah, his top game is very passive.
Yeah.
He was just winning up ride time to kind of secure a round.
Yeah, but you see how risky it was, right?
Yeah, very risky.
Yeah, I thought he was just kind of trying to get frames up and then attack the body more than the head, which makes sense. And then Poirer was just doing such a great job of tying up one hand, and then, I mean, honestly, it looked like he was maybe overdoing it, where he was trying to throw the leg over for the triangle and stuff like that. Like there's very little finesse involved with how he was trying to navigate that far arm. And then, but then the arm, the same thing with the arm bar, he just threw it up, and then he had good solid hip position and good knee position, so he was able to get some going with something. And then on the omoplata, I thought he was at least going to like let him roll through or like come back to something, or whatever else. But you just, obviously 4th round, they're tired, slippery.
Yep. Yeah, but and also, how would you score that? Right, if somebody is on the bottom, but he's obviously way more offensive. I mean, this for me was kind of like a gray area. I wouldn't know how to score it, but there are some examples of Tony Ferguson, let's say, where it's obvious that he does way more damage from bottom.
Yeah, yeah. I would score this the same way as I score a knockdown. Like if it's that close to submission, and multiple attempts, and when I first saw that, I really thought the arm was, like the elbow was hyperextended, and then it switched to an omoplata.
Now, I mean, maybe I didn't catch it right, and you guys are right, but I was very focused on his hand positioning, right? Because the hand basically decides if the lock is on. And while watching it, I always felt like he kind of wiggled out and in the right way. So I never felt like there was like one moment where I felt like the armbar was on for a little short time, and then he wiggled out again. But mostly, I think he did a really good job doing the famous armbar wiggling. Yeah, I mean it works, right? It absolutely works.
Yeah, I think it was on the most. I think before he stepped over the head.
Yeah.
I think that was where it was tightest. But I was surprised that they weren't so slippery that he could have pulled it out or anything.
Yeah, it looked before it was kind of on. It looked like he could just pull out, right? It looked kind of loosey a little bit. But who knows?
Yeah.
It's always easy to say from the outside.
Yeah. Exactly.
Casual.
I mean, there's also, yeah. I mean, there's an aspect too. It looked like he was in a reverse, or like a reverse triangle. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Reverse triangle. Now all Poirer has to do is like face backwards and he can finish this.
Yeah.
And then, and then like Poirer kept facing forwards, and I don't know. Obviously, again, like we're not the exhausted ones that brain damage for 15 minutes. Before trying to do things that we're good at. But,
I mean, that's also what I'm kind of advocating. I mean, for him, obviously, it worked, and it was exactly what I would have done if I'm on bottom. But people should always be cautious about omoplatas, armbars are tricky. It's not like a guaranteed sub, and that's why I usually don't go for it if I have better options, right? So he did what he had to do. He created scrambles. He created something advantageous for him. So in this situation, it's all right. But all I'm trying to say is, I don't think it's good to overly focus on armbars and omoplatas. If you choose how to invest training in mat time, I feel like maybe work more on more fundamental stuff, and these are like the sprinkles you get on top.
Yes.
I actually just look at omoplatas as a good sweeping option, and I would say, like, I'd be advocating guys investing time in working on it just as a sweep from the bottom, but don't worry too much about all the fine finishing details that you need to pull off.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Just like get it, use it as a sweep, and then because you can spend ages trying to figure out how to finish it. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's you don't get much reward from spending that time unless you're Clark Gracie or something.
But even then, I don't know how he would do in MMA with that game.
Yeah. I mean, even his no-gi game is not as good as his gi game.
Yeah.
Like, he needs that wrist, that cuff control.
Yeah.
And that belt, like the belt's so huge for him.
Yep.
It's also really interesting because what you just said about the omoplata can be said, maybe not that extremely, but also about the Kimura. The Kimura for me also is mostly just a way to control, not really a submission. I mean, obviously you can finish the Kimura, and there are instances where it's also very high percentage of a finish. but it's mostly just a way to control, sweep, create something, right? It's funny because the omoplata and kimura are so maybe different looking from the outside up, but they are both the same kind of shoulder locky thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It gives you excellent control over people's posture.
Yeah.
They both have that in common.
Yeah, but still, even then,
double wrist lock. I'll just correct you on that.
But
how many syllables do we say if I say
you mean you might?
Wrist,
No. Let's settle this from now. It's obviously a gyaku de garami, right?
We should.
That's absolutely obvious.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't like any throw then is called that udegarami if they've got the grip on it? Like, so just any like
throw?
Yeah, so if you get that and do like a sumigaeshi?
No, it's a sumigaeshi.
No?
Yeah.
Still a sumigaeshi? Okay.
It depends. If you roll on top, it's actually a hikomigaeshi, which is like the same thing if you get on top. But again, that's just this stupid judo terminology thingy where they discuss about everything. It's also, at some point, it's cool, and at another point, it just gets really annoying.
Yeah, I'm only, my knowledge is pretty much from my Cairo Parisian video where
okay.
That was when I spent time like looking into it because I'm like, if I get one of these damn names wrong, I'm gonna fill up the comment section going.
But the point is, you cannot get it right because people will always find something in order to insert their own knowledge, how much they know. Same thing is which some throws are actually so hard to get apart. So don't worry about it. I often get into discussions, and then in the end it comes down to it's hard to tell.
Yeah, that's what I found because it was like what they intended to do, and then what actually happens to when they go for it could change.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at least for a lot of high-level judoka, like, that's very purposeful. Like, you know, they're going from, they'll go from, like, an osotogari, right, to a haraigoshi. And, like...
Or ashiguruma.
Is that what it is? Yes.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the really important thing. Because, like, ashiguruma, haraigoshi, and osoto, it's really hard... especially ashiguruma and haraigoshi is really hard to tell apart, and oftentimes when people say it's an haraigoshi, it's actually more of a ashiguruma. But I actually myself tend to just call it a haraigoshi because, like, who cares? Like, it's easier to not get confused. So I call everything just haraigoshi basically if it's forward, even if it's an ashiguruma.
Okay, I remember I was I was being a little pedantic, and you know, maybe I was definitely being a dickhead. But like this guy was like just what bothered me was how much conviction he said it with. So like he was like there's like a name this move kind of thing, and this guy was like, oh, that's called I forget. Maybe he said it. Maybe it's the Haraigo. He said Haraigo. And I was like, actually, you know, Rama coming in. I think I said it's a koshiguruma because the grip's on the head. And I was like, I tried to be nice about it. This guy went full ballistic. Well, actually, it's this, and this is what it's called in Russian. And I was okay, whatever. But that guy ended up blocking me because of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also whenever people say because of a certain grip, it's almost always wrong because you can basically do almost all throws with different grips. It's about the mechanics behind the throw and not about the way you grip.
Yeah. So maybe again, I was the dickhead there.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. But talking about stupid terminology, so Sonny did a breakdown on the very very famous and basic metric turn called the broomstick.
Yes.
And apparently, this technique is not called the broomstick, but it's an ashi otoshi now.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, because I just watched a few days ago a video by Gary Tonin on the broomstick.
Oh.
Yeah. And how they at the Dana Death Squad call this technique an Ashi Otoshi. And I was like, bro, it's a fucking broomstick. What you talking about? And the funny thing... Yeah, and the funny thing is, I mean... Yeah, it's a broomstick.
Leg entanglement Otoshi.
Yeah, Ashi Otoshi means basically leg... leg fall or leg
leg fall. Okay.
Yeah, kind of. And yeah, and the point is, I mean, I can understand the use of Japanese terminology in many ways. I can understand if that where it originates from. I think it's okay, I get it. I can also understand if you call it, because it actually is more specific. So, for example, armbar actually could be many things.
Yeah.
Whereas Jujigatame is always a very defined armbar.
Yeah.
So I can also understand that. I can also understand... okay, let's say with that. But what I don't understand... If you invent Japanese terminology who actually does not exist in judo or jiu-jitsu, to make it sound more jiu-jitsu-ish, I guess. Because, I mean, it's a broomstick. Why do we have to call it Ashigata? And the most annoying thing for me is probably everybody in jiu-jitsu will call it now that.
That's it.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to get corrected.
Yeah, and that's the worst thing about it.
Oh man. I had that. I put something up on Reddit this week of just a friend who was doing. Okay, we call it a leg grab rollover sweep or a pendulum sweep, or it's like the same thing, right? But for whatever reason,
you mean the Roger Gracie thingy, the flower sweep?
I think so. Yeah, flower sweep.
Yeah, okay, yep.
Like John Will, because I'm John Will Machado. John Will's called it leg grab rollover. That's just what we call it. But of course, we also know it as the other names. It's like no big deal. But man, I put it up on Reddit in the title, like leg grab rollover, without even thinking about it. And then like the only two comments I think were people going, excuse me, that's actually a pendulum sweep. I'm like, guys, I know, like, I'm not trying to rename it or anything. I'm just like, it's different lineage or something. It's just colloquial. Relax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, had to get that off my chest. Good now.
Yeah. That's why I also like actually the naming in wrestling, because it's more like, it's fairly simple. It's like single leg. Guess what? That's when you grab a single leg. Double leg. Yep. Guess what? That's when you grab two legs. It's like, it's not that specific, and I think that can actually be in some ways disadvantageous, but also disadvantageous, but it can also be very advantageous that it's less specific because it's easy to talk about. Yeah.
Now, you'd think it's like that for every move, right? Or do you? Or at least I did at some point. But then you get down to some of them, and in particular the cow catcher.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
Cow catcher goes by so many names.
Yeah. True.
Like death grip, pancake, I think like sidewinder or snake grip or something like that.
When we were growing up, we called it a bulldog.
Bulldog, there you go.
I know.
So it's not like that with everything.
I know.
At some point, I thought it was.
I feel like the cow catcher is if you go to the chin strap side, and the cement job if you pull to the underhook side.
Yeah.
And
mixer if you go back the other way.
Yeah, right. So it's okay,
that can still get a little confusing as well.
Talking about confusing wrestling terminology, maybe you guys can enlighten me. And I think I've got it right, but I'm not sure. What is the difference between a high crotch and a head outside single? I believe there's none. But people use the high crotch more kind of if they need the shot, if they mean the shot. And the head outside single is more like the position. But I'm really confused about actually what's the real difference, if there is any?
Yeah,
Rama,
it's a very
I'll let you go.
yeah, very very small difference. Just like you were saying, so like they'll call the high C a high C if you're entering in with something above the knee, basically. And as you know, once you've picked up the leg, the hand placement matters. But like if the leg is elevated, like where the head is, if the head's on the outside, you might as well just step out too, and then you kind of have an elevated signal too. So the high C in that regard, like, doesn't necessarily hold up. Like, it's not necessarily a crotch grip. But if the head's on the outside, I will almost always call it a high C, because like when you finish, unless you're pulling out to something on the ankle, then you're probably still around the thigh. So if it's on the outside, if the head's on the outside, then I almost always just call it a high C.
So I heard like it originates from that traditionally the high C you basically really gripped high in the crotch with your shot, and obviously you have to get in way deeper on your shot. So that's maybe, as people get better, not as practical anymore. So it just kept his name, kind of. So like basically, like I said, there's not a real distinction, right?
Yeah, not really. I mean, at this point, what you'll hear some people call like the shot that like Daniel Cormier and like Sadulayev and like especially heavyweight wrestlers, what you'll see them do is the hip. They'll call it a hip heist now, where like you get your hip underneath their hip, but then your grip has to be like right underneath there.
Yeah, I loved this one actually myself.
However, I've also seen some people use the hip heist as like a sit out.
Yeah, that's why. That's how I know it. So that's why I was confused right now.
Yeah. It's this terminology again like bites us in the hip.
Yeah. Also, I really liked, not because I agree 100%, but because I just really liked the idea, how Matt Lindland talked on Sonny's podcast about how he actually thinks the single leg should always be basically high in the crotch and really tight. So he doesn't believe in this whole high single thing, which basically is more common right now, and he really is more like a hip in kind of guy. And I think that's something to think about, and especially in MMA, I think it's much more applicable, because obviously the high single works wonders in freestyle and folk style, but we don't see it that much in MMA or even grappling. And so I think like there's a value in sliding your lock really up and getting your hips in for a more controlled and stronger finish, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That was a great interview, by the way, man. I really liked it.
Yeah, I liked it too.
I was so stoked to get that. I'll tell you that. I was like...
And he sounds so nice and well balanced, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He was so cool.
Like, doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would bite someone's ear.
That was Mike Tyson, Rama.
No.
Not Matt Lindland.
Nah,
you seen that?
Matt Lindland did it.
Matt Lindland did it too? What?
Yeah, man. There's only a couple of his matches online on YouTube, and like he cheats in all of them, I think.
I didn't know that.
He's pretty... And then like... Yeah, there's like one on... I think he headbutts the guy or something. It's pretty wild. Like,
I really see some dirty stuff out of him, man. And be like, I don't like Matt Lindland anymore, so I don't mind if he loses. So like, whenever he'd fight anybody, unless the person he was fighting was a complete dirtbag, like Baroni, then I was like, all right, let's see how Matt Lindland can lose. So it was nice to see that personality.
Yeah, I mean that was something that I kind of like wanted to like bring up, was not the specifics, because then another specific one was apparently he also used to not bathe before he would fight for like days, so he would smell. That's what I'd read. Like, And I was like, I wonder if I could bring up maybe not that, but just talk about how when you're coaching the Olympians, how much you reckon they should push the boundaries of the rules. But then I was like, you know what? If you're in any kind of official capacity, I better just not leave. I better just not go there. But I would be really interested to actually find out what he thinks on that.
That's interesting.
Because he did seem to, and especially those Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen's got a couple of videos up about him, and they're all about kind of how he's pushing the rules. There's one where he's like grabbing fingers and all that stuff. So yeah, you got to. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I think it would probably be one of the.
I also liked how one of his pillars for being a good competitor was finding Jesus.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that's. I mean, it's about finding some purpose, I guess, right? It could be anything, basically, but. I mean, it's fairly obvious that a lot of successful athletes actually kind of are really religious. Just look at Khabib, for example. And I think it's aside from your own beliefs or what you do or not, I think for them personally, I think it helps them because they feel like, if it's true is another topic, but they feel like they have a real purpose to do what stuff they do right now.
Yeah, and I think in that context, when we were talking about, I think Robert Follis, it's like, oh man, that seems like there's a lot to that story as well. That seems pretty wild.
I mean, I always say I don't like to get into religion and politics because things get dicey.
let me finish off then with the story of a catch wrestling story. About how the Whizzer and Run the Pipe got their names.
Ooh, that's great.
Have you heard these ones? Or?
No.
I don't know if they're true. Okay. First caveat.
Okay, I want your sources.
Okay. Just be a guy. I think it's a guy on Reddit, but wait till you get to the end and try and tell me it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
All right. So that's the caveats at the start. All right. Now, the Whizzer, okay? Now, the Whizzer and Running the Pipe both come from in the early frontier days of America when they were building the railroads. Mm-hmm. Okay, and there was a lot of people working on the railroads and they would be wrestling, in their spare time, of course, as catch wrestlers do. Work hard, wrestle at night. Now, the Whizzer, obviously... when they're working on these trains, there was no trains with toilets on them, okay? So they would just have to lean out of the train and do their business as they're hanging out the train, okay? And so there was a moving train, right? So you got to go to the toilet, let's say urinate, okay? You got to urinate and you'd hang out the train and urinate while the train's moving. Now, there used to be a metal bar hanging off the side of the trains that guys would overhook and hang on to while they would urinate off the train, and that bar was called the Whizzer bar, okay? So they would hook on overhook tight with a Whizzer while they hang out the train, and that's where the Whizzer gets its name from.
Oh, my God. That's perfect.
Okay, you like that, Andy? I got to get some.
I like that. Yes.
Astonished look on his face.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm
shaking his head.
No. It's fine.
And then running the pipe. I'll finish running.
Yeah. Go with running the pipe. I'm curious.
Is when they're laying down pipe work for the train. For the trains to run, for the train tracks, they'd actually be grabbing the pipe and running it through their legs, which is like grabbing the single leg, eh? So they'd be running the pipe. And that's where running the pipe gets its name from. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense.
It kind of makes sense, and I think it's a good story, so I kind of...
And it's way cooler than all the judo terminology, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well,
I may have repeated it as fact a couple of times, but I give you guys the caveats.
Yeah. I've heard the Run the Pipe story, but the wizard story, that is brand new for me. And what I was going to say is there's always like this debate whether it's called a wizard or a wizard.
Like a wizard is this guy who can use magic with a pointy head.
Yes.
So I have to correct you there.
You call it a wizard, right?
Yeah.
You call it a wizard because you're hanging onto the wizard bar when you're hanging out the train. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I need to see this. I'm sure they have to have like a demonstration or something online, right? Of a wizard bar.
You know what? I don't think I've fact checked it that hard because I don't want to know. You know,
it's better if you keep the illusion in your head.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more fun to just believe.
I mean, let's look at this, like the engineering aspects of this. So like, there's a large open cargo door. They run a large metal bar parallel to that opening, and then someone is overhooking the bar, leaning out and tinkling.
Couldn't you just?
That's
Yeah.
So here's the other thing. Like, I mean, you have to be really careful about the direction you're facing, right? So you're always facing backwards. That means that you're always facing away from real. So then, I mean, that'd be quite the sight. I would love to try it, frankly. Okay, so you're leaning out. You're just spraying the American prairie. Okay. I think I get it. So, and you have to do it one at a time, right? Because obviously.
I guess so. I didn't.
Could you imagine just like two guys going at once, and then one guy just being like, "Why, Tom? Why?"
I really hope next time at a tournament I say wither him, he doesn't start peeing on him, because that could get us in problems, I guess.
You know what? Maybe I'm going to have to fact check this. I think that probably the train historians will probably be the people to.
You can ask Sheldon of Big Bang Theory. He likes trains.
There's some pretty hardcore train people. I reckon. I don't know the truth.
Or like next time you see an overhook, just call it a urinator. Very strong urinator.
Yeah, so here's something I like to do. I guess it's not official and it's just me, but I personally feel like it makes sense. I call an overhook if you pull up, and I call a whizzer if you drop your shoulder down, because I feel like they have two totally different purposes, and I like to make the distinction because it gets clearer what I like you to do. Because if you with the overhook, you can actually pull somebody up and do, I don't know, upper body stuff, and a whizzer usually you drop down with your shoulders and stuff, and I feel like this might be the same grip, but the mechanics and functions are totally different, and just want to get that out.
That's interesting.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a great distinction, man. I think at least in American wrestling or American pedagogy, they only use the term whizzer if it's defensive.
Yeah, because I've always felt like a hook, basically, right? A hook is to pull stuff. And if you whizzer, you don't really pull anything. So I always felt like that's weird. But if you pull up, you pull with the hook. That's fine.
I mean, like a single leg defense, then. So, like, they get a single, and then, you would say put the whizzer in. Like, like saying put the overhook in sounds weird to me almost.
Yeah.
But like, you put the whizzer in and you pull up with the whizzer, and that's no longer a whizzer in your terminology.
Yeah.
Or in your definition.
Yeah. Then you would overhook. But like I said, it's just definitions. It's nothing official. Yeah. It's just I like to make the distinction because I think like it's a bit clearer. Yeah.
I in my teaching at least, I've more or less stopped using whizzer altogether because it was like confusing as to what it was, and people know overhook basically from the first day. So
I don't agree, because like this is what I meant with the whizzer is for me the mechanics, because you can still use a shin whizzer or a belly whizzer, and they all have kind of the same mechanics, and that's why I think whizzer is fine. Because overhook is really like, it's this one thing, but a whizzer is more for me like general, like the way you drop into the arm and stuff, or the belly. By the way, I mean, we should wrap up, but so I don't want to get in another discussion, but I think like the belly whizzer is great for grappling especially, and stuff like this. So because like I said, I don't come from wrestling, so I had to look all this stuff up, and I think many jiu-jitsu guys don't know really what a belly whizzer is, and maybe look it up, because I feel like it can help a lot in a lot of situations. It's a great move. Yo.
I don't know what a belly whizzer is.
You don't know what a belly whizzer is? Rama, you know what a belly whizzer is.
Yeah, I know what a belly whizzer is.
Okay, so explain, Sonny, what a belly whizzer is. Seems like he doesn't know.
Hello?
Yeah, I said, Rama, explain, Sonny, what a belly whizzer is.
Where the whizzer where you're grabbing across your own, like right above your belly button, and then you're gripping your own ribs basically on the far side, and then you're turning towards the overhook, so you have a bit of a forward and downward motion.
Nah, isn't a belly whizzer where you wither the other guys? Where you basically get a pry bar in front of the other guy's belly and whizzer him down?
I'm losing you a bit, guys.
Oh, okay. So maybe we should wrap up, and I will try to get a good clip of a belly whizzer, and maybe I picked up something wrong, which might be because what Rama described is something else I mean, and we will fact check who's right on the next episode, and start off with the belly whizzer. Bam. Which will not take a long time, I guess. So thanks guys for having the chat again. It's always really cool to hang out casually. I mean, Rama got into a cafe, hanging out really casually, listening to the bells. It's exactly the
level of casuality.
The level of casuality we want here. So props for that. I'm also sitting here, not in my sweatshirt because it's too hot, but in my
singlet.
Exactly, yeah, singlet, yeah. Always. All right, so thanks for being here, and see you next time.